If you grew up in Australia, you most likely have heard of Franklin's Family Supermarkets. It was an Australian icon that many budget-conscious families relied on to get by. I remember being a child and going with my nan to do shopping at Woodwriting Franklin's in New South Wales. It had a tall roof, white floor tiles. The back wall was nothing but freezers and fridges, and you could grind your own coffee beans in the aisle. The shelves were always well stocked, with a mix of brand name products and Franklin's own brand, No Frills products, something that many Aussies will remember. But what happened to Franklin's? Franklin seemed to slowly disappear from our suburbs and shopping centres over time, and the last Franklin's at Westfield Miranda closed its doors in 2015. There was no huge announcement, no ceremonious departure, just a slow and silent decline that marked an end of an era. Franklin's was an Australian grocery chain that was created in 1941 in Sydney, New South Wales, by a man named Frank Lindstrom. Frank focused on providing an affordable shopping experience for Australian families during World War II, and he succeeded in this with Franklin's. Australian families flocked to Franklin's, enjoying the cheap pricing and no-fuss shopping experience. In the early 1950s, post-war Australia seen a boom in the economy and population, and Franklin's began opening more and more stores around Sydney. Eventually, Frank Lindstrom sold Franklin's to Harold Cornock and Norman Teague in 1954, and it was during this time that Franklin's developed their own brand of products titled No Frills. This brand became iconic across Sydney, where Franklin's operated. The simple white labels with bold black lettering stood out and saved Franklin's a lot of money on production, and also fitted into the concept of their no-nonsense, basic and simple shopping model. Many Aussies reminisce over this brand, a staple in almost every working-class family at the time. In 1978, Dairy Farm International purchased Franklin's from Cornock and Teague. At the time, Franklin's had 75 stores and boasted a turnover of $1 million. It was also around this time that Buy Low supermarkets began operations, using a similar format to Franklin's. By 1980, Franklin's had over 200 stores, and by 1982 had begun to expand outside of Sydney, with the first store in Queensland opening in 1983 at Toowoomba. Franklin's now was a serious player in the Aussie supermarket wars, being ranked the third largest chain, surpassed only by the big two, Coles and Woolies. By 1959, Franklin's had stores open in Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia, and the Australian Capital Territory, and even launched its own radio station to be played within their stores, called FR-FM. Franklin's changed hands from Dairy Farm International to Pick n Pay, a South African supermarket chain which began trialling new product lines, updating systems, and evolving Franklin's to keep up with the big two. By the 1990s, the Aussie shopping scene shifted, with the weekly grocery shopping trip being transformed into more of an experience than a chore. Coles and Woolies saw this shift and quickly began working towards modernising their stores and craft a vibrant, bright and exciting experience for shoppers. A stark contrast to the unpolished, no-frills approach Franklin's delivered. Although Franklin's simple, clean-cut design model had worked so well for so many years, they struggled to keep up with the big two, and in response, new store ideas were developed. First was their own bottle shop, selling liquor, initially named Liquor Save, and it opened in 1990. Franklin's Big Fresh opened its doors in 1992, a larger style supermarket store, focused on a larger assortment of fresh produce and providing a fun shopping experience for families, and the smaller scale Franklin's Fresh, following along in 1994. And Franklin's changed their slogan from more in your trolley for less to look at us now, in reference to their modernisation. The Franklin's Big Fresh design was inspired by a New Zealand concept from the food bar chain, and it was something not yet seen in Australia, something that Franklin's would hope would give them the step up and away from the big two. The Big Fresh stores were vibrant, colourful and engaging, adorned with animatronics of dancing fruits, singing vegetables, mooing cows and clucking chickens, all ready to perform for shoppers at the push of a button. This proved to be a unique fun experience for myself as a child. I recall going to Franklin's Big Fresh in Glendale, New South Wales, and being thrilled by the animatronics, something not seen in any other supermarket. Franklin's Big Fresh in Gosford, New South Wales, even had a mini Commonwealth banking branch inside the store, and a hairdressing kiosk that was so successful it was incorporated into various other Big Fresh stores across the chain. It was also around this time that Franklin's began rolling out their line of Franklin's Mini Fresh stores across Queensland. This was a huge change from the basic Franklin's experience Aussies were used to traditionally. Big Fresh was successful in some areas, mostly those with young families, although many criticised Big Fresh stores for their store design, which was similar to IKEA, where shoppers had to make their way through each and every aisle to get from the entrance to the exit, which could prove an overwhelming and time-consuming experience if you only wanted to grab some milk and bread. Although Franklins were working hard to modernise and upgrade, keeping up with changing shopping trends, they lacked the large range of products that Coles and Woolies provided, and as it turned out, the Big Fresh stores were expensive to build and maintain. As Franklin's reached the 2000s, things seemed to begin rapidly going downhill. Despite being a sponsor for the 2000 Sydney Paralympic Games, Franklin struggled with their identity and began lacking consistency. Where once Franklin's was consistently known for its bland, simple and no-frills stores, service and products, it now is a confusing mix, with some stores remaining as the original model, some being transformed into Franklin's Fresh and Big Fresh designs, and others being stuck somewhere in the middle. Whilst the big two had a focus on ensuring their stores be as similar as the next, and grounding the sense and consistency for shoppers that Franklin's was struggling to achieve across their 280 stores. And as a result, customer and loyalty brand eroded. Logistics began failing across Franklin's stores, and many stores around this time were known for lacking a large range of products, an issue that Coles and Woolies did not have. The big two were known for always being well stocked and boasting a large range of international foods, high brand products, and even introduced their own branded items, such as Franklin's had originally done with No Frills in 1978. In 2001, the German grocer Aldi opened their first store in Australia. Using a similar model and concept to Franklin's, Aldi have proved to be a success in Germany, providing a bare and basic store design, their cheap own branded products, and it only took a few years for Aussies to embrace Aldi for budget grocery shopping. Franklin's struggled to keep their position in the supermarket wars, changing their slogan once again to "Saves you money." Although this was not enough, and Franklin stores slowly began closing their doors and disappearing from shopping centres and suburbs in which they once thrived. Pick and Pay seen this decline and made the decision to sell Franklin's, although were not able to sell the business as a whole due to its fragmentation, and instead had to sell stores individually, with Coles and Woolworths snagging up the most popular and accessible stores, Woolworths purchasing 67, Coles purchasing 37, and other small supermarket chains such as Aldi and Foodland purchasing over 45 stores across New South Wales and Queensland. Some Franklin stores proved to be too small to accommodate Coles, Woolies and Aldi's, and eventually the business Metcash, the food and shopping giant behind IGA, the Independent Grocers of Australia, purchased the remaining stores along with the Franklin's brand and name for $215 million. Metcash retained the name in hopes it still stood for something to generations of Australians who knew and loved the brand, and the slogan was changed once again to "That's what I like about Franklin's." During their reign of Franklin's, Metcash tried to revamp and reconnect Franklin's with shoppers, but unfortunately it proved to be a little too late as customers had gone elsewhere and found new favourites. In 2012, Metcash separated from Franklin's and converted most of the old Franklin stores into IGAs. The last Franklin's store closed its doors in April 2015, and over time the Franklin's name and brand was forgotten about, closing a chapter in Australian history and ending an era. Although many younger generations have no idea who or what Franklin's was, there are generations of Aussies who fondly recall memories of their trips to Franklin's with parents, accolading Franklin's and their no-frills brands for allowing their families to affordably live and eat, many of these being lower income families, single parents, immigrants, and of course those during the early days of Franklin's facing the harsh reality of wartime food rationing and a wounded economy. Whilst Franklin's may have disappeared from our shopping centres, it remains in the memories of thousands of Australians and has taught a good lesson that sometimes following trends and trying to keep up with the Joneses does not always pay off. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed today's videos, please like and subscribe for similar videos.